Hello and welcome to the Cynic Weekly on Thursday the 7th of August 2025. I'm your host Barry Gallagher, and as always I'm joined by my good friend Stuart Duggan. Stuart, how are you?
I'm good, Barry. Excited to be back at HQ for another season. The timer puck is live and we're ready to go.
Yes, it's very close to my heart.
Quite right.
I've been a wee bit of lawlessness without it all summer. We're also joined by Colin Kearney. Colin, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it, and yeah, just remind myself that I'm not protected by the paywall. Yeah, I'll keep my paid for opinions to myself.
That's it, definitely. And yeah, it could be a spicy one tonight, given all that is the shitstorm that is Celtic.
There's a lot of questions.
Yes, that's it. Yep, the people have spoken. I suppose we'll do a bit of housekeeping. Stuart, how's your summer been?
It's been quite good. It's a big reveal. I'm getting married this year, so it's been quite a lot of wedding central.
Let me be the first to congratulate you on your imminent marriage.
I like it, good bit. But this month, I'm actually staring down the barrel of not one but two stag do's. So I have that nervous energy of a man that will absolutely love every moment of it, but I'm not as young as I once was. Starting this weekend, so
good.
Do you have the sort of people that will do bad pranks?
Ian Duggan.
Oh, of course, yeah, you can't do much about that.
May God have mercy on your soul. We'll have an empty seat there
in memory
forever. Retire your number. Colin, what about yourself?
I'm all right. Yeah, I am. My main headline is I don't have a place to live at the minute, which is kind of fun. You might have heard this on. Well, you probably wouldn't have heard it because I announced this in a reaction to some friendly that I can't even remember. And the previous night, we got evacuated from our flat by the fire brigade, and we still haven't been allowed back in. So it's quite an interesting experience. And thanks to the people of Vinted for providing me with my new wardrobe, and Christopher Gallagher. I've been wearing an excellent Minor Threat T-shirt that he gave me.
Lots of old wrestling T-shirts.
He was trying to make me wear a T-shirt and he was trying to convince he wasn't like some weirdo. I can't even remember the guy's name.
Was it
the Peacekeeper or something? I don't know.
Terry Funk. Was it your Ange Postecoglou T-shirt that you do still wear?
Right, Christy. Right, but anyway, we were actually just talking off air that my summer holidays are coming to an end. Tomorrow's the last day of it, but I do have Oasis to kind of cheer me up.
Oh, that'll be good.
I suppose I've pussyfooted around enough. Pussyfooted. Very good. But it's just a straightforward one. Stu, I'll come to you first. Like, what the fuck is going on at Celtic?
What is going on at Celtic? Well, nothing, basically, but probably quite a lot, and not the things that necessarily we want. It feels like, I don't know what you're kind of piecing it together. There seems to be some sort of stalemate, I would suggest, between the manager and the board. Obviously, Celtic have not been as active or as impressive in the transfer market as you would hope. And I kind of feel like now, week to week, I've stopped sort of looking for rumours and positive links and starting to sort of theorise what is happening and why is it happening that way, and who's to blame, where the logjam is, how it's all bottlenecking. And I still feel that by the end of the window, the squad will obviously in a much better shape. But I'm now at the point where you just cannot imagine how that will happen or how that will look. We're not the sort of team that just signs players overnight, or certainly haven't been for a few years. So you still feel like you're... there's a couple of rumours that have started in the last day or two, but that still makes you at least maybe 10 days to 2 weeks away from actually getting anything over the line. And I think that obviously a frustrating or disappointing game at the weekend has not been ideal for morale. I think we will come to that, and maybe I'll save my thoughts for that. But if I had to put an answer on what is going on, I think that Brendan Rodgers is not happy with the calibre of player that's being presented to him. And I think that the board are not happy at paying the amount of money that they would be asked to in order to get the targets that Brendan Rodgers wants. I think we saw that at the weekend from some of his protest selections, which again we'll come to when we talk about the St Mirren game. But it feels very reminiscent of that last window when it was Timothy Castagna and whoever it was, and
The boy Shar that went to
Fabian
Newcastle
Shar, yeah.
and-
Fucking hell, he was been brilliant.
I know.
He had a point.
And then who was the other? Was it? Oh, what was the Piccini or something? Remember the right back?
Yeah.
Went to Valencia, I think.
Yeah. So it feels very reminiscent of that, and obviously in that window, you see what you get left with, and I still maintain some hope that it's not going to quite go that way, and you hope that everyone can get back on the same page, but it just feels a bit fraught, a bit tense, and very frustrating as a fan. It's the fans that are suffering most from the whole situation.
Yeah, and it's funny, just as you say, like, we did the lunch club on Friday, Stuart, and we were saying, Colin, that almost you can make the noise go away temporarily by, if you've got Celtic to look forward to go and see, and it didn't really shake out that way because, as we'll come on to, the performance wasn't great, and we managed to get the win, which is important, but it didn't do anything to really allay the fears of, I'd say, the majority of the support now.
Yeah, and I was before the game the other day on Sunday. I was talking to my brother, and I was, he was, what are your thoughts on the season coming up and stuff? And I was like, I think it'll be a lot tighter, a lot more. Teams seem to be putting some decent teams together. Quite looking forward to that sort of more competitive sort of league. And then within 45 minutes I was like, I'm not looking forward to this more competitive league. I'm now sort of despondent already, and I think that just Brendan Rodgers' kind of comments as well are kind of because we get so little to go on from the board. Yeah. It's not like we have a lot of kind of communication, so we have to feed off scraps. And when Brendan Rodgers said that he was something along the lines of, I'm sick of talking about transfers,
while the window's still a month to go,
that's quite an alarming statement, and it doesn't really fill me with confidence that they've got a couple of aces up their sleeves, and it's like a wee wanker. Don't you worry about transfers, and literally the sort of watching other teams, like watching Hearts the other night. Thought they were really pretty good in the first half against Aberdeen. They seem to have, the Braga chap seems pretty good. But even like Aberdeen, I'm in Aberdeen, I've got an Australian, what's his name? Anyway, begins with him. Anyway, he's a winger, and can't recall his name, but also had some quality to it. And I think if Aberdeen, they've got some quality peppered through it, and if Jimmy Tillon can get a bit more of a sort of team performance out of it, the quality will be a bit higher. And you just like to be prepared for that. Yeah. I still think we will be, competitive and hopefully getting some sort of statement wins, but it feels more like things that you would think would be a bit of a gimme are not going to be a gimme so much. Milanovic, there you are.
He did look good, actually.
Aye. And the thing is, talking about picking up sort of players and smart, and the thing is, the board obviously don't want to spend any money. And with picking up Nygren for sort of a good fee because of his unique situation, and that happened quite early on, it feels like there's no more of those situations that are going to pan out. And it's just... Yeah, me and Brendan were both tired about talking about transfers, and but maybe he could do something about it.
That's true. Well, maybe not. This is the case, but I don't know if you saw, it was kind of on Twitter or X, Stuart, that someone had compared Rodgers' quotes on Friday last week where he says, I need to do a better job of convincing the board, and it was just after the qualifier in Ange's first season, Midtjylland, that he said the exact same words, I need to convince the board. And I don't think that's by accident, because it obviously does take a lot of convincing, but do you not think, I can see where you're coming from, the fact that the scouts have probably provided this level of player. Brendan maybe doesn't know a lot about them, or maybe he's just been playing stubborn now, but who do you apportion the blame to? I'm guessing the board and then Rodgers, because I don't think either are blameless.
Well, I think that, for one, with so much ill feeling, people can use the situation around the club to grind whatever axe they've wanted to, whether it's about Rodgers, whether it's about the board, whether it's about just generally teams, players.
Yeah.
Everyone's angry, so I think there's a lot of blame kind of going around. I was thinking about this a lot at the start of the week as to whether or not Brendan Rodgers is the problem in all this, and perhaps if you had a manager that played ball, would things move a lot smoother, a lot quicker? Would you get a better caliber of player in? You could argue that perhaps when Postecoglou was there, he certainly got players in and was very vocal and very stubborn, and things did seem to move a little bit quicker, albeit the infrastructure of the club was slightly different at the time in that first window. But, you know, the fact that he didn't really have a personal relationship with Dermot Desmond, did that make things easier, harder? Did the situation with how poor we'd been this season before play a factor? So if Brendan Rodgers is the problem, I suppose as a fan base you have to ask if, and I don't want to paint him as some like hero figure, if the manager is not going to stand up for raising the standards of the club, then who actually is?
Yeah.
And it's by that metric that I don't like seeing it, but I don't have an issue with him drawing a line in the sand with his team selection and not playing Yamada and not playing Inamura, because it is a complete dereliction of duty to, by this stage, after selling your top landmark franchise player in Kyogo in January, to have not found a replacement that's of comparative sort of ability, price point, all these sorts of things. And similar for having a left back to deputise for Kieran Tierney. Kieran Tierney's injury record is well known. It is a risk with that sort of deal. They're probably paying a lot of money in wages, and a real part of that working is having a suitable deputy for him. Currently, Brendan Rodgers has been provided with a left-sided centre half who has played very little professional football, bought very, very cheap in an environment that he is not familiar with, and being asked to say that's good enough, and that's not good enough.
No.
And so I think whatever you think of Inamura, he is a victim of this situation, unfortunately. I don't think that it means that Brendan Rodgers he doesn't take a look at the players, he doesn't care, and isn't doing a good job. I think it's perfectly reasonable for a manager of Brendan Rodgers' calibre, for what he's provided the club in terms of pretty much continued unbridled domestic success since he arrived, to just get a fucking left back that can deputise for this player that they've put a big investment into. Obviously, we don't really know what he's asking for, but I don't think that Brendan Rodgers is asking you to go out and buy Benjamin Sesko or any of these players that you can't even fathom competing with. It probably is players in that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 million pound bracket in some key positions. And I suppose from the board side of it, they maybe don't want to scale up make that the norm, because then maybe the wage bill rises. But economically, that's where the game of football is, and you have to kind of move with the times. And I think that not only will you be dwarfed and left behind in Europe, you're actually starting to, I would say, see concerns that you could slip away domestically quite quickly. I think if Celtic didn't get deals over the line between now and the end of the month, that squad would really struggle domestically, because you do look like you could drop points any week against teams that are improving and are investing and are being ambitious and are just moving a bit quicker than us. So I'm not too sure where I would attribute the blame. I can sort of see both sides of it, but I would probably be inclined to say it's more of a board issue than it is the manager at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And just before I bring you in, Colin, got a question from Daniel. So he said, my question up for discussion, unless you've already covered it and missed it, is Brendan Rodgers any good at spotting talent? We know he's famous for coaching players to become better, but when it comes to recruitment, he seems to be a novice. And most of the players he coaches at clubs are already there, so can he spot talent? And moving on from that, do we need real change at boardroom level to take the club forward? Because the academy doesn't seem to be doing what it's supposed to do. The women's team is viewed as insignificant and stagnating to the point where they'll be lucky to finish in the top 3. And if the board can't, won't or don't provide the necessary funding for the first team, then are we saying that Europe isn't important, and are the board complicit in being a hindrance to the club and the expectations of the supporters? So a lot to unpick there, but it kind of links back to what Stuart was saying there about there's blame to kind of go around for a few of the people at figureheads at the club.
Well, I think the idea about Brendan Rodgers spotting talent, it's not really, it shouldn't really be a big part of his job to be scouting. You know, if we had more infrastructure, I mean, presumably there is some kind of degree of scouting, but from what I can infer, that we don't have enough personnel to negotiate deals, and more than one at a time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the general kind of lack of investment in the infrastructure. I think it's interesting bringing up the women's team, because if you think it's bad following the men's team, the women's team have literally, they had so many outgoings and have only signed 2 players and are just on the verge of going back into competitive football. So, and it is just seems to be treated as a kind of an irrelevance. And I think that is kind of the sort of a healthy body is, every part of it, is working the academy, the women's team, the first team. And if it, I think we can be guilty of straying into hyperbole in transfer windows because when they're still open, because we're all worried and and get frantic. But I think that the sort of because we have these same fears and we have these same discussions, and we don't see that investment in infrastructure, some kind of director of football idea, they try it for a second and then it doesn't immediately produce results, therefore it gets shit canned,
That's it, yeah.
And so I think that it's very hard to fathom what the long-term plan is, and I think that's really the core of the core of my fears is like what the future is going to be like. And as Stuart was talking about, like, football has changed enormously, and also the sort of the machinations of the transfer market is very difficult for a sort of medium-sized team like Celtic in the grand scheme of things, who are cash-rich by Scottish standards, but compared to some of the bit players in England, don't spend as much money as like sort of championship clubs. So I think that for Brendan Rodgers, I think that we often talk about his developing players. A lot of that I have to take on faith, because you can say that he's developed Liam Scales, but Liam Scales has hit his ceiling, and it's great he's going to the ceiling, but should he be putting energy into getting a player like Liam Scales to that ceiling, rather than sort of developing players with higher ceilings and somebody that can produce more for the team? And yeah, it's the second part of the question. Let's have a look at
about the board a hindrance now to the club and expectations.
Yeah, that's basically what's boiling down to, isn't it?
Yeah, essentially, as you were saying there about the how the sort of dereliction of duty to the women's team. It's almost like the whole football operations gets in the way of the board's.
It's getting in the way of the brand.
I wish it's getting in the way of them making money. I wish we didn't have to put a team on the field.
That is true, to be honest. And just on your point, Colin, about how we are, hyperbolic as a fan base, and especially during transfer windows, it is important to. I think I was trying to use this as means to stay positive. That we are in this situation almost every year, and we have done good business more seasons than not, albeit with some sort of shite attached to it. The one thing I would say is, we've done a lot more business, both outgoings and incomings, than we would have done compared to even like last season. But the parameters are very different this season in terms of what the squad required and the fact that we don't have automatic Champions League qualification. So it does feel like a bit of a gamble, and it does feel like an unnecessary one to take. With regards to the Champions League qualifiers, I think it's unlikely that you're going to have someone come in that can make a real, unless you see them probably by the end of this week, someone that can come in, train with the first team, play games, play minutes, and make a tangible impact on that tie, which is pretty unforgivable. Obviously, we saw midweek the boy that Rangers signed from Go Ahead Eagles barely trained with them, and he's come on, set up a goal. The player that Gassman that they've brought in has made real tangible impacts in terms of progressing them in Europe, and that's kind of what the main target should be at this stage. It shouldn't just be hard hats on, limp over the line until you get to the end of August, and then we start our season in September. And also, you've got a 2-week international break, and depending on the calibre of player we're signing, you're possibly looking at an international player going straight back out again. So they're not in the door until middle of September. And just regarding the board. I know that you can't shift the Desmond's lineage from the club. It's not going to happen. He's not going to down tools. He's not going to pass it on when he dies. It'll be passed to his son, you would imagine, and depending on his outlook on it will go. But I do think at board level there does need to be significant change, and it's not just the football operations, although Colin, you rightly point out the stuff for the women's team, the academy, pathways, etc. If you just look at the stadium, not being able to just get that sorted as far, even if you just look at Celtic as a company, they're not a well-run company. It's not the way that you would expect a company of that size and scale to be operated. It's not moving in a particularly modern, it's not run in a particularly modern fashion either. So there does need to be wholesale change, but it doesn't feel like there's an appetite for that from the majority of the fan base, unfortunately. And so you are just having to suck it up and see what they come up with. And that, I think that's why there's so much frustration, that there's a real powerlessness to it. And you'll probably only see proper agitation, protest, etc., when it starts to go really wrong, when the horse is bolted.
Yep. Just on that, I've got another question from Darren before we'll move to some news. But Darren says, has anyone any fucking idea why the fuck we are fucking waiting until after the fucking qualifiers to make a fucking signing? Apologise if you're listening to this with young children in the car.
My ears are not a potty, Dan.
We have never been more cash rich. I'm pretty sure if we don't start spending this money, FFP will make it more difficult, as most of the income will have been brought over out with the assessed period. We dragged the arse out of last summer and paid the price. Now we might be using the high fees and performances thereafter as an excuse not to spend decent money. Spend the fucking money, you greedy old Tory bastards. Here. Darren, but Colin, it's been kind of highlighted all kind of summer on pods and on forums and other sort of media that we rarely kind of splash the cash. I think that's almost mythical that once we've got the guarantee of Champions League football, and I know it's been a while since we've had the qualifiers, since Ange's first season actually, but I've got no real confidence that, say we get through, I think the second leg's the 26th of August, isn't it? And then we've got, 5 or 6 days until the window closes. Given, as we've all said, how long it takes us to complete deals, I don't buy into this sort of thing that we're waiting for the Champions League money to come in before we start to splash the cash. And as Dan says, there's no need to. I mean, we've never been as rich as this in our history.
Yeah, I think this is the straws that you clasp to, what can be the rationale behind these decisions.
Yeah, kind of ticking them off.
And but the thing is, if you look at, talking about the stadium, look at the dugout fiasco, that's a basic point of compliance with the regulations, and they do it at the last possible minute, causing maximum disruption to supporters. And it's all just about, but that's kind of an indication of the mentality of just we'll just get it done when it needs to be done. And I'm pretty sure it was done as cheaply as possible, and I feel that's how it pans out in the pitch as well. And but where's the if you don't get through those qualifiers, God forbid, but and it seems that we have quite a favourable tie. However, if you mess that up because of a lack of investment and the fact that you have essentially a front line that's not working and doesn't understand each other. I think that was something I took from the game, was just the players aren't on the same page. They're not reading each other very well at the front. There were some good chances created, but with nobody with the sort of nous to actually get into the right positions to score them. So yeah, it's kind of horse is bolted, that's already been. I just don't put any stock in the fact it's we'll get through and it's okay, now we'll invest because we want to make great strides in Europe. I also think that Brendan Rodgers, perhaps because it's probably going to be his last season at the club. I mean, again, I'm going back to my sort of freak out hyperbole, but you wonder if this is kind of okay, well, this is Brendan Rodgers. He had his progress in Europe. So that's a box ticked. He's away after this, so we'll just kind of muddle through with what we've got, and then we'll start a rebuild when we have our new manager, and if we if we just if we scrape the league with not investing money, then that's just good business, because we know we didn't have to spend that money and we can still do it. So all it it needs a very, very nasty surprise for any kind of real sort of mythical war chest.
That's it. Sure.
I don't think that Rodgers, I mean, obviously he was extremely vocal, and it was quite funny after, I think it was Friday afternoon when we'd been quite positive and we're like, let's all try and look on the positive side. And then about an hour after we finished recording, he was like, I will not be at this club if the board are not more ambitious, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't really, I mean, none of it's particularly logical, but I don't think it would make sense to not purchase players, because they are still assets and you are still able to make money on them. Even a player like, maybe not Ida, but Arne Engels will have a resale value. It won't be like £40 million, but they'll be able to turn a profit on him, providing if he plays at a similar level to what he did last season, for example. I still think they would turn a profit on him. So I think that the board will still be motivated to literally buy assets to keep the business model of the club turning. I suppose it's just whether or not maybe that's the sticking point. In terms of like you're right, Barry. I don't think that they're waiting to see if we qualify to suddenly go, right, now we'll spend 10 million, now we'll spend 50 million, now we'll spend 20 million. I feel like it's more to do with confirmed Champions League football as a bartering chip for the players that they're getting, and also that they're targeting, and also largely maybe trying to wait out some other teams that can't get deals over the line or move in different directions because they think that they'll pick up a better calibre of player that late. But I don't understand why you can't at least sign one winger just now, and then help qualify. You don't have. We've already said we don't have the resources to do 4 deals at one time. Celtic need at least 4 players, and that is, of course, providing we don't get the sting in the tail of a major first team player leaving, which we are concerned about. And if that happens, then you definitely don't have the resources to replace them on top of doing all this business. So why can't you just bring in a player before and then take that approach afterwards? It seems just really defeatist and really backwards.
Yeah, and just kind of in a similar vein to that, so we'll do one more listener question before we move on to our news. But Paul has said, how did we get to this stage of being weaker than we were last season? We have 3 wingers, Yang, who is so inconsistent and probably not good enough to be a starter, and Tilio, who's already out the door, but we can't let go due to incompetence. 3 strikers. Eders has no confidence and probably not the right player for the manager's system, despite him being a player the manager desperately wanted. Kenny, who works hard, but he wasn't in the manager's thoughts until we sold our best player. And Shin, who's not a player the manager wanted. Also, we seem to be linked with defenders with no links at all in the forward areas, which is frightening. The paranoid side of me feels that with the other side of Glasgow appearing to be on the up, and the board feel that this is good for business and Scottish football. But is it just incompetence and an out-of-date board that haven't got a clue what they're doing and taking the piss out of us, knowing what the club means to us all? Sorry for the long message. Need to vent my frustration. Thanks for all your hard work. And I think, Colin, that is one of the things that is concerning. And Paul mentions their links to defenders, but I think compared to normal summers or any other summers, there's been a severe lack of links at all. And I think just the way that football is nowadays, I know that Porto were able to do a lot of kind of media coverage that they were able to keep Luke de Jong's transfer quiet. No journalist reported it, none of the fans knew, but you know the way the Celtic are, there's players need to be linked for about 3 weeks before we even decide to put in an offer. And the fact that there's so little links at all with such key areas. The one thing that's kind of jumped out at me as well is that the players that we'll come on to talk about, it seems to be we're targeting left-sided wingers when, for me, the obvious one is a right-sided winger. And I know that might be to move Dyson in, but again, it's not ideal. And does the lack of links at this stage in the window worry you?
Yeah, it obviously does. And just also a point that Stuart raised was the potential, like, unpleasant outgoings that might happen, and the only real kind of clues you get that these things might happen is when you start getting linked to, because we know we're not going crazy with bringing a lot of bodies in, and then you're linked to more centre backs, and then you're like, so what's happened to CCV? I think we're all a bit worried about some Dyson Maeda rumours, but it just seems the links that we kind of there seems to be like fan media links because there's people that are, obsessed with football, watch a lot of football, see people that are, some friends of the show that will say this guy would be excellent. This guy, these are never links that you're kind of. And when you get a link from Celtic, it comes from the usual couple of sources,
selected ones,
and they're often not as exciting as some of the kind of the sort of fan appointed rumours. So. I know Paul was looking for, in the Untitled podcast, he was looking for people to create rumours, and I was like, I don't think we need any more of them, Paul. I think we're quite good at doing that ourselves. But it's the length of time from rumour to holding the scarf up, and we know roughly what that time frame is, and there's only 3 weeks left in the transfer window, and that's basically, so we're down to, we need some links pretty soon, and then otherwise it's going to boil down to that last day scramble
and who's available and who's offered to us,
and that is a real. I mean, I know we all have a mystery box, but it's definitely squeaky bum time when it gets to that. And the winger, it's like, can I interest you in Jota and a moon boot? I mean, so
yeah. So we'll move on to some news. So as we kind of referenced, Kairat Almaty beat Slovan Bratislava 1-0 last night thanks to a last minute penalty. Stu, I'm kind of in two minds about this because I don't know if it's better than ever with Slovan Bratislava, and again that might bring its own challenges because we're nowhere near the level as we were at that point last season, and I think they have got better. But then, as Colin said, it's a favourable tie, you would think, if we got either of them, but obviously with Almaty it brings in the travel and the time difference, and I saw someone saying that Celtic would be quicker going to play in New York than they would be going to Kazakhstan for that, and obviously not ideal with the decision not to cancel the Livingston game.
Yeah, I think that the whole tie is a bit of a potential banana skin, to use a classic football cliche. Certainly on paper, it's probably the draw that you would want from the teams that were available, but I think it's more the weekend that's given me a little concern with that, where Celtic that game against St Mirren could conceivably been against Slovan Bratislava, if you know what I mean. And then you go into an away leg where, anything can happen with Celtic away in Europe. I don't think it's absolutely nailed on. As regards to who you take over the two of them, I would just like to think that the travel is not that big a deal. I know that it's obviously very far to go and there's a time difference, but there's a lot of recovery. They play on the Tuesday.
Tuesday afternoon, I think.
Tuesday afternoon.
And then not until the Sunday.
And so, I feel like every time Rangers could go and play on Mars on the Thursday night and then play us at home at Celtic Park on the Saturday and turn us over. So it shouldn't really matter. It shouldn't be that much of a holding. I would just hope that whoever we get, they just put in a positive performance in the first leg and just kill the tie.
Yeah.
And then hopefully that negates any concerns about cancelling the Livingston game, etc. But I think that they're both probably difficult games because we just have a tendency to make these things difficult for ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's the case. It's more, if we were a fully functioning football club, you'd probably feel a lot more confident in this. Colin, former manager Martin O'Neill, was doing a wee bit of PR for the new league season, and he kind of just ties in with everything that we've said already. So he said that fans will be expecting a bit more in terms of recruitment after Celtic's improved performance in Europe last season, and he says that the worries that the fans have nothing new. So he was kind of referencing that, I think he made the point that in his day, if he didn't get plan A, why would he want plan B? But the Celtic board would offer him none of those. And I can imagine the board being absolutely furious at that because it's just kind of adding fuel to the fire. But he's right.
He is right. But also you do get a wee bit alarmed that it's kind of like release the Kraken, get Martin O'Neill out, get Sin Martin out to get the fans on side with the shit show, you know what I mean? And I think he's shown a wee bit, and love him, everybody loves him, but he is a bit more of a company man these days, and so yes, it is nothing new, but that doesn't mean that the frustration is is negated by that. It's there have always been valid concerns, and the fact that that's nothing new and it hasn't changed is part of the problem.
That's it, yeah.
And we live in the football world from when Martin O'Neill was manager to now is like completely different. You know, it's almost unrecognisable in a way. And
we were spending more money then in terms of wages and regular transfers.
Look how long our record spends lasted. You know, I mean, it's kind of reassuring to know that we've been here before, but it's also disconcerting that we've been here before and we're still enduring it.
Yeah, I always think of that quote that Brian Quinn said that Martin O'Neill said with regards to that Celtic fans should get used to life in the slow lane, and we haven't won a European knockout tie since he was in charge, which is horrendous. Stu, we've been linked with Clement probably, Bischoff, a winger from Brøndby, who was on the verge of joining Brighton and Hove Albion, which fell through in early February, but he could be available for 6.3 million. I believe he plays on the left and the right, but he can also play left back as well. So one of those Swiss Army knives.
Love that. Yeah, I'm not putting any stock into any transfer rumours.
No, I'm not watching them or anything.
But obviously, if hypothetically, well, he sounds like a biscuit. Clement Bischoff.
The biscuit tin.
There you go. If he was the guy, Brighton have like some of the best recruitment.
Yeah, that
in world
enthused
football.
me. Yeah.
You even see just now the Man United were linked with Baliba, and you just know that if he goes for crazy money, they'll have like 3 new versions of him.
Probably make the team stronger. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's obviously a good pedigree. If it's that sort of price point, I think that Brøndby can absolutely look forward to a £2.7 million bid in their inbox in about a week's time.
And they find out he had a clause that he could have got him for in 2 years' time.
That is something that, as we sort of scramble around for, you know, theories and you know, speculation about why we're putting off this business or whatever, I cannot get my head around the lowballing. It doesn't make sense that when you do have players, so a player, say Clement Bischoff signed for Brighton for 7.2 million. I think that it's not unreasonable to suggest that Brighton would move him on for like 20, 30, 40 million. I understand that that's in the EPL and the platform is higher and the money's crazy and it's different economy down there. If Celtic could sign him for 6.3 million and he's as good enough player to do that, then that's a great deal. So why do you then have to, within those parameters, try and get a good deal?
Yeah,
you're already getting a good deal and you can't afford it. Yeah. You're either going to, I mean, what's the tax bill going to be this year? Because they're literally going to have to pay something like that anyway. So it's almost like a free asset. And the same with, you know, that Broim link where he was valued at 6 million. And we went 1.25, 1.7 up to whatever it was, up to about 50% of the value. Why are you bothering? Yeah. Like, if you're not going to meet it,
and we just walked away.
It just seems baffling and quite embarrassing. And I think that one of the reasons that folk have been frustrated with, I don't think that people watched like the Rangers Pilsen game at the weekend and were like, oh my god, they're actually going to be this amazing team this season. But I think it's just the frustration that they had an area, they needed players in, they spent money, they recruited them, they got them in the team quickly, and then they saw the benefit. It's got nothing to do with like the performance or even the individuals. It's just the fact that historically one of the most disorganised, shambolic football clubs that history has ever known can go and do that. And I think there's honestly an argument to be made that with that new setup, they're already like they have better systems in place to go and do these things than we do. Yeah. So why can't Celtic just go and identify a player, put in a bid and sign him? It's just, it shouldn't be that difficult.
And it's common sense that you're going to sour relationships and you're going to put people's back up and you're going to make a bad, because people talk and people see these things. And if you're just kind of clearly making insultingly low offers, unless it's just camouflage for some masterstroke, which I highly doubt. I think it's absolutely weird. you would even let people know that, because as you say, embarrassing.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think there probably be agents, etc., that will just point blank refuse to deal with Celtic now. Other link was, it's weird, I've seen that he's been kind of reported as a centre back, but I was kind of looking at he played most of last season as a left back for Calgary. Left back Adam Obert, but again we've put in a low ball offer, as is the case as you mentioned there, Colin, but encouraging that maybe I think he's got a good pedigree, 22-year-old Slovak international. And as Stuart said, it is one of the problem positions. Maybe not as sort of urgent as sort of right wing and striker, but it probably is maybe third or fourth on the list of what we need.
Yes, and certainly if Inamura's not fancied, and we have Liam Scales as a backup left back, I am very keen on this Adam Ober, who I don't know anything about. And sort of, a good age to be an international as well. It's just the phrase Scottish champions will need to raise their offer, because as we've just discussed,
Aberdeen statement.
100%. I mean, it's just like, yes, we will raise our offer by 0.1 of a million, and that's not going to fly. So again, it's good that there's these links, but how strong the links are, and but like, still, it's not a striker and it's not a winger as well. And I know the Bischoff thing, but that looks like again, like something that's maybe a bit pie in the sky. So yeah, but nice to have a link.
Yes, that's the stage we're at. We're desperate for a rumour of any kind. And Stuart, your boy Marco Tilio, Rapid Vienna.
How dare you? Taking ownership of that.
I prefer
Getting
to
punched on Christmas Day by Chris Sermani.
That's it. I prefer to wait until the end of the window to land their top target. But Celtic will not sanction a transfer until they find a replacement. See, just on that, do you think that that's Rodgers digging his heels in with that one? Because we literally need bodies?
Yeah, I think that is possible. And there's very few things that kind of are keeping me going in terms of this transfer window. One is obviously Newcastle are having a much worse window than Celtic in terms of their just inability to sign anyone. And secondly, if Marco Tilio is someone's top target, then you're having a better time than Rapid Vienna. And so my thoughts and sympathy go out to the Rapid Vienna Weekly, or whatever they're calling it.
Vienna's in Europe, right?
The Viennetta, as it would be, I'm sure. The Gazzetta Viennetta. I don't know. Work on that one. I wouldn't be surprised, because I think that it's like that Roy Hodgson. It's like, hold on, you're taking the piss here, when you're trying to literally just get everybody out the door. Now, Marco Tilio evidently has no place in that team or in that squad, and so I don't really subscribe to the notion that how unfair it is that he's having to sit in the stands when he could be off in his new team. Like, well, good for him, but if you do get an injury, unfortunately, we are going to have to name somebody on the bench, and I do think I think that his level is so low that it could only be posturing that's doing that, and fair enough, but it's fucking bleak as well. So
absolutely. Obviously, as we've referenced already tonight, with the 1-0 victory over St Mirren on Flag Day, great to see Paul McStay back in the stadium, and the wonderful tributes to John Clark and John Fallon from both the Green Brigade and the boys. But again, I feel this has been really negative tonight, but I think that's the kind of temperature of the way things are just now, Colin. But there seemed to be a bit of a flatness around the place, and obviously the football on the pitch didn't help with that.
Yeah, I think it was all absolutely going like gangbusters until the football started, and that's always a bad sign. I think there are positives to be gleaned, but you really have to sort of dig about for it a wee bit. I think some of the worrying things are the kind of tactical, and there wasn't a lot of tactical things going on apart from like long balls, and the fact that not being able to break St Mirren down at home on Flag Day is alarming. It was great to see Kieran Tierney. I think some of his delivery was great, some of it wasn't so great, but I mean, we can forgive him a bit of rustiness, but also just some of he bamboozled players a couple of times. It was just a delight, and you know that obviously we were all a bit worried that he went off with the medical staff, which feels like, I don't know, I say, oh, he's fine. But it's like, call an ambulance, but not for me. So that was great. I actually thought that I think we were kind of creating some chances, but as I alluded to earlier, there just seemed to be no rhythm or understanding between a lot of players, and most of the players that we saw have had a pre-season together, and that kind of also just like what is the instruction that they are getting, like, because it seemed like the style of football wasn't what we were seeing in pre-season.
That's it.
And Nygren, who I think everybody was quite sort of favourable, and still, I'm still very favourably inclined towards him, but like he had a debut that maybe was a bit meh, to be sort of even-handed about it, but he seemed to be playing differently than how he was in pre-season, and so I think that's kind of alarming, and the substitutions weren't really working apart from James Forrest, and it's been oft remarked upon, but like we're still relying on James Forrest to be a game changer for us, and even though he didn't score the actual goal, and by the way, I did say that Luke McCowan would change things before he came on, and so I know me saying that doesn't carry much water, but I was very pleased with that. But yeah, so there's positives to be gleaned, but I think it wasn't the sort of rock and roll football you want on a flag day to sort of, especially with that kind of, imagine embarrassing yourself in front of Paul McStay. Come on, that should have at least sort of spurred them on to do greater things. But hopefully it's just a wee bit of rustiness, a little bit of nerves perhaps, and I think that looking at Pittodrie, we're all a wee bit sort of been thinking about this Pittodrie fixture since it's been announced, as the sort of second game of the season. It might be a happy hunting ground, but, it's still one of the more challenging away days we can have. And I just hope that we go and allay sort of fears with a real sort of, like do the statement away from home, can the beans, and when they'll get back to Parkhead, then they can, let's just call it a false start and let's crack on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stu, do you think would they be learning anything from the game?
Yeah. I thought, it's so disjointed, and I think that, there was some tactical discussion about it earlier in the week on some of the pods, and
available on the Cynic.co.
Oh, hello. Nice little plug. I kind of feel like a lot of the issues that you have are personnel based, in terms of we've got quite a large chunk of the pitch that's completely dysfunctional. Like Adam Ida, I always try and defend him and always try and sort of see the positives that he can contribute, but he's been so poor. Looks really low in confidence as well, and the whole notion of like trying to hit him earlier and be more direct, I think maybe works if you have like a functional target man like that, but his inability to just take the ball in made that really difficult. And then I talk about him a lot, but Yang is just never a Celtic player, not in a million years. And again, just super dysfunctional. At least if you had, doesn't have to be Nicholas Kuhn, but for argument's sake, Maeda and Kuhn, you're kind of like at least have some balance there in terms of creating chances. And when it does come to breaking down a very well organised, and credit to them, team like St Mirren, that's kind of what you need, and I just don't think that Yang's going to offer you that. There's not really much guile or courage or any quality ultimately in the final kind of moments that you would need. I did think that there are positives in that. If Celtic had gone and blown the doors off and won 5-0, then I think there'd be better feeling, certainly, and you would be perhaps a little calmer, but it probably would paper over a lot of the cracks in that squad. Similarly, it was frustrating, it was disappointing, but I do think that you do get those games where that could have easily been like 3-4-0. Yeah. St Mirren really rode their luck just with some of the saves bouncing off of the post, off the keeper. And I do feel like the application and the effort was there. They certainly didn't chuck it. I know there's been sort of chat about the substitutions, but I thought Forrest was obviously excellent, and I think Luke McCowan does deserve a lot of credit. And for anyone that questions like his role in the squad, that's exactly kind of what he's there for, because at the moment we don't really have many positive attacking options that could just take a shot from distance or have a bit of quality in the kind of crunch moments, and he's has done that before and did it again, and I hope that he can kind of kick on a bit this season compared to last. But I think that if you're talking about learnings, the main learning is just that the squad is not strong enough. It's in terms of quality. You don't have a striker that you can rely upon, and relying on James Forrest is not shouldn't be plan A just at his age and with his injury record. And as I said earlier on, don't like to see it, but I completely defend Brendan Rodgers' decision to play Johnny Kenny over Yamada. I would much rather watch Yamada start, but I think until such times as Rodgers gets at what he considers to be a marquee signing to play up front, I don't think you're going to see Yamada get his minutes. And the same, if you don't like watching Liam Scales play at left back, then I don't think you're going to see anything different until we get some movement in that. So that's just the way it is going to be.
I thought it would be a bit of a disservice to put on Yamada and for his debut in a game in the game state like that. And I think that maybe if we were 2-3 up, you might have seen him just for a sort of little kind of cameo. But I thought that was quite sensible.
Yeah, I agree with
that.
Yeah, I think because obviously the sort of main train of thought is that there's a message to the board and all that, and I hate that because we seem to say that a lot about Rodgers, but I think maybe on a personal level it's protecting the player because you know what the expectations are like.
I also thought that he caught a few strays for his comments afterwards, being positive and saying it was an excellent performance, etc. I think in his heart of hearts he absolutely knows that that's not the level, but I think that with the clamour around transfers, and there's just a lot of talk about the deficiencies in the squad, I think if he was to hammer them at this stage, then he was really kind of that's a real uphill struggle to get them back. And I thought it was quite interesting, the juxtaposition of what Russell Martin did on the Saturday with how Rodgers handled it on the Sunday. And maybe you can just see a bit of inexperience from Russell Martin there. Maybe it's going to work. Maybe that's them all sorted and off to the races. But I suspect that that's not going to be the only poor domestic game you see from Rangers, particularly in this sort of transitional period as they bleed players in. And if he's kind of gone as nuclear as he did, then there's not really much else to say or do at that point. Whereas Rodgers can keep his powder dry until at least September, hopefully, and unload.
All he has to do is wait for their fans to go nuclear, because they do that very readily.
Yes, that's it. Obviously, as we've touched on, we travel to Pittodrie on Sunday, 12:30 kick-off live on Sky Sports. I suppose team selection, the only person who's now added to the pool, Stuart, is Simpson Pusey. Do you think it's probably not the place to bleed a new centre-half, is it?
I think it's going to be interesting. I was concerned by Rodgers' comments about him when he said he's there to support the team, when we've literally just watched him supporting the team from the stands at the weekend, but also just that notion that he's not actually coming in to be first choice and sit alongside Cameron Carter-Vickers. I think he's good enough to go straight into the team, but I don't think he will. And so I suppose if he does, maybe that's indicative that Rodgers has gone, get me that guy. Yeah. That's a great deal for us right now. I don't care if there's an option on him. Bring him in. He strengthens our first 11. If he doesn't, then I think there's more question marks about how that deal's kind of come around and the role that he's actually going to play. I suspect in terms of a starting 11, it will be the same, but probably with Forrest in for Yang, because I just thought we were like a different team when you had them. Yeah,
and it's almost like, I know that a lot of people prefer Forrest to come off the bench because he's a safe pair of hands, but as you were saying, Colin, about trying to get the show sort of, or the train back on the tracks with a statement victory, you almost feel like start Forrest to try and get the game won earlier. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, I think I would, because we know that nerves can quickly get away from you. Like if you see a tight first half away from home, and then Aberdeen think they can get something out of it, but they, it is a wee bit like, well, you might have McCowan as a potential kind of game changer coming off the bench, but like, it's just kind of, it just shows the paucity of options that we do. Like it's Forrest. We just know Forrest is going to play some part, and you could debate both sides. It's better to start him. It's better to have him as an impact sub. I just hope that. The one thing that I thought about Aberdeen is they looked disorganised, and they've got some individually good players, but they looked, it was a wee bit like watching a schoolboy game, when everybody's kind of like chasing about and doesn't know where they are. Although apparently, schoolboy in my day, because apparently now the kids are all playing out from the back and stuff. So it just kind of, chasing the ball about, and it looks like we could play through them if they have the sort of the audacity to come at us. We should be able to play through them quite easily, and hopefully, I would like to see Puzzi start because what's the point of having this guy for a season with no options for somebody that's played in the Champions League? And I think that would also I think Brendan Rodgers can be quite savage, which is one thing I quite like about him, is that you can see he seems to have his favourites, but then as soon as that's displaced, then you're dead to me. I would kind of I'll be looking forward to seeing the team sheet for that reason. And just with Yamada, I think it would be nice if we can, with James Forrest's hat-trick in the first half, he can come on the second half and get a little bit of experience at the first team play. Because also, the longer we don't see him, the more it's going to be a sort of like Inamura situation. Is he going to go out alone?
Yep.
What is the point of this guy? What's happening with our what is the pecking order of our three strikers? None of whom seem to be even sort of at the standard of being a second striker, So it'll be an interesting team selection.
Yeah, I think so. And it's often a positive thing, Stu, it was kind of deemed maybe a few years ago when you knew your starting lineup, but for us it feels because there's literally no one else of quality.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think that there can just be, that can change quickly. I think it will just be 2 or 3 players, which I know is unfathomable right now from Celtic, but I think if you add 2 or 3 players in the right positions, you start to look at that and go, right, that's quite good. There's some actual depth there. But for the time being, I was talking to somebody about this through the week, that I honestly, it just feels like you've got to put your hard hat on, hope that you don't drop points in August, hope that you qualify for the Champions League, and then reassess it in September, which is fucking miserable. As a fan, if you live and breathe Celtic, that's an absolutely horrible way to be. But yeah, hope for the best. And I would hope that on Sunday, I hope that you'll see just a slightly more fluent performance. I think the likes of Hatate, Nygren, etc., they're just a little bit untidy with the ball, and that they can play much better. We've actually seen them play much better than that even in pre-season, so hopefully that's something that they can add to. And hopefully it's just a nice solid win.
Yeah, John Beaton's the referee, Andrew Dallas on VAR, perfect. Great. That's what you need when you're not feeling too confident. But yeah, I think it's just a case of, and it is, I agree, Stuart, it is grim when you think just get through this, because this is the time, Colin, for the football fan where everything should be expecting, and you're enthusiastic about the new season. You're looking forward to kind of seeing how the new signings, what a concept would be. But it just kind of feels like all hands to the pump just now, just to kind of get to the end of the window, which is not ideal.
Yeah, and we've all been looking forward to the return of Celtic and competitive football, and you just don't want to get to that anxiety stage immediately. No. And that's when it feels like you want to see those green shoots, if you will, that you saw in pre-season, even though there was like a scudding in there, and obviously pre-season means nothing. But you sort of want to carry on sort of some of the excellent football we saw and the exciting things like having Tierney and Nygren. I mean, I think Nygren, I felt really bad for him. I think his debut was kind of hampered by sort of maybe being asked to do something that he hasn't been doing previously. Hopefully he'll just get back in the horse and show some quality, and we can get excited about that and hope for the sort of the 3 quality players coming in. But the quality that we know we have and the potential that we know we have shows, so we can just kind of enjoy watching our team, because it's just, I don't want to be sort of biting my nails and expecting to, because we're first game and we dug it out, and we know we're good at that, and there's hundreds of examples of us digging out at the last minute. It's great. And when you saw Callum McGregor scoring his chopped off goal, the delight and the ferocity of his celebration made me feel really good, because I like to see that from my captain. And so yeah, I don't want to get to it. I'm still looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to Sunday. Hopefully we can just enjoy it and take out our frustration from the cup final loss, because for me, like, watching them play on Hearts on Monday, I was like, how did we lose the cup to this team? You know, like, we should absolutely flatten them. So let's get Mallet's mallet out and hammer the Dons.
That's it, definitely. Just to kind of finish up then, so, and it kind of ties into what we're all kind of hoping for, Stu, that on this day in 2016, Scott Sinclair, I believe, signed in that morning, and he came off the bench to score the winner on his debut against Hearts.
Nice.
It shows you that Rodgers has previous of throwing players, and I know that he's tending not to do that so much in his second tenure, but a great memory of that, and a player that will always be remembered fondly.
Absolutely. I was thinking about Scott Sinclair just yesterday, because I saw it sort of, I think it was on Twitter or something like that. Wilfred Zaha is playing in like somewhere in the MLS. It's like,
Plays the same team as Abada.
Does he?
Charlotte.
And so he was talking about, it was this clip where basically he'd been going mad at some of his teammates, and folk were saying he was like a diva, and he was like, well, what do you want? He's like, do you want me to be here as an experienced pro accepting like piss poor standards, or do you want me to like try and raise the standards? Because like, I'm just being me and blah blah blah. And I looked at him and I was like, man, why didn't we sign Wilf Zaha if he's kicking about in the MLS? Like, because he could absolutely have like a Scott Sinclair style arc, I think. But I just asked Gal to Google him, and he's 32, so I don't know, he's probably absolutely walk up here, wouldn't he? Be fine. Get him in, Sharon.
Did you see? I saw. There was a weird thing about. Say, there's all this sort of like culture now of like dupes and replicas and all that, but he got like, I think it was famous Nike boots, but it turned out they were fake.
Oh, really?
He did a video about like how he'd been like scammed or whatever.
Oh my God.
It's funny. I thought he's not unlike the rest of us with the DHgate.
He's been scammed by Michael Nicholson.
That's it. Yeah. Colin, I guess that this is a good example of how you can sign a player and they can come in and kind of change your fortunes.
I just have to tip my non-existent hat to you for adding this little cherry at the end, just to show you what can happen.
Yes.
So you've really softened the blow of this whole pod. Yeah. If we could see something like that, sign me up.
Yeah, definitely. So,
but don't sign me because I'm terrible at football.
Might come to that, Colin.
Yeah. I know that to the listeners, I know this has been a fairly negative pod, but I think, as I said earlier, it kind of is a reflection of the majority of the support. I know we don't speak for everyone, and I know that some people say it is a positive that there's 3 weeks left to go, Stuart, but I think the manager kind of is the sort of the person who's taking the board to task when no one else is.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I thought that his comments last week were pretty heavy-handed, but I think that maybe it's better that you have that with a month to play with as opposed to a week, because normally that's when those sorts of comments come out, and I think he will obviously be cognizant of the fact that we've got these qualifiers coming up and that what he's seeing he knows is not good enough. So yeah, hopefully he's pushing all the right buttons to motivate egos or loosen purse strings or whatever has to be done. You have to believe that there's something going on, and that that something will happen soon. So yeah, I think last week when we signed off in the lunch club, I was like, everyone should just try and be positive because there's plenty of time to still be negative about it. And this week I'm like, absolutely fine to dial it up to like Amber Alert in the misery. We're not quite at red levels. It's the 10 season, but give me another week. And see where we end up.
Brendan Rodgers is currently losing so much golf. Like he's trying his best.
Yeah, I think we need. Remember the week before the window closed last time, we had the fan sort of berating Peter Law outside St Mirren Park, and he was in Camden. Get him a ticket for Sunday, and get in their face. But yeah, Colin, I think as kind of Stuart and I were kind of hoping that it would play out when we did the lunch club last week, that you almost sometimes need the football as a distraction from what's going off the pitch, and if we could get that right on Sunday, it would certainly ease a lot of fears. Yeah,
and it's just the thing you don't want to be having these discussions, and also we want to, as you know, fans and let's face it, as poor podcasters, we like to be positive. And the thing is, it's a bit easier to be positive when you're doing the lunch club and you maybe got a pint. But yeah, so just something to be kind of like some hope for the coming season, because this isn't just us like hitting the panic button on one performance. I think there's been, from the end of last season, there's been doubts and not just sort of shite-baggery. I think there's been legitimate areas that needed concern, and everybody can see it. So it'd be nice to start seeing, and as you were saying, you know, like with Rangers with their new owners and stuff, and like seeing there's problems and then just like, you know, fixing it, whether or not, but you know, like at least attempting to fix the problem, and we are not doing that. And it's a thing to be risk averse about. Maybe money, yeah, you can argue that, but don't be risk averse when it comes to winning the league, and that's what we're kind of dicing with a wee bit. And so as soon as we see some good football and some things to get behind and some good rumours, and we can all enjoy watching Celtic rather than having a bad time.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it on that note there. So Stuart, thank you.
Thanks, Barry. It's good to be back. Hopefully we'll have some more positive discussions in the coming weeks.
Yes, and Colin, thank you for joining us.
Yep, thank you. And I second that emotion.
Yep, so hopefully good performance and result on Sunday, and then we'll start to see hopefully some links to players and then some completions of deals. But this has been the Cynic Weekly. I've been your host Barry Gallagher with Colin Kearney and Stuart Duggan, and we'll speak to you down the road.